Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm kind of in awe because I think I'm like the first non-lesbian speaker, so I'm a little intimidated. But thank you for having me, and I'm definitely an ally. So I'm Obi, and I work at X. Thanks to Megan Smith, actually, who brought me there. So thank you, Megan. And we do projects like this. Self-driving cars, delivery drones, smart glasses, smart contact lenses, energy kites, carbon neutral fuel, and internet from balloons. So we aim to solve very large problems in the world with the help of technology, and we call ourselves a moonshot factory. And at X, we define a moonshot as follows. So we start with a huge problem in the world, something that, if it was solved, would affect the lives of millions or even billions of people. We propose a radical solution, something that sounds like science fiction today, but then we work on a breakthrough technology that hopefully, within the next 5 or 10 years, can turn that science fiction into a reality. So in the next sort of 7 minutes or so, I want to share with you some of the lessons that we've learned. The first one is somewhat counterintuitive. I want to start with the idea that sometimes it's easier to make something 10 times better than just 10% better. So if I say to you, can you make a car run on a gallon of gas for 100 miles? You might be able to do that, right? You just incrementally improve the methods that we have today. But if I ask you to make it run for 1,000 miles on a gallon of gas, you can't do that. You have to start over. And that's kind of scary, but it's also incredibly liberating. And the other side effect it has is that it sounds so impossible that it's inspiring, and other people will want to help you. The car that founded X was self-driving cars. The project that founded X was self-driving cars. And the problem we're trying to solve here is mainly one of safety. So 1.2 million people roughly die on the road each year, and 94% of all accidents are caused by human driver error. So the radical solution, a car that drives itself. It's never drunk, it's never texting, it's never asleep. And for the 20th century, and even the beginning of this century, that was science fiction, right? I love this ad from 1957. It says, electricity may be the driver. And I also love the fact that the family is playing dominoes, because today we'd all be like, on our phones. So this is now what it looks like today. This is a video of what our car sees, because in the last 10 years, there's been enormous progress in sensors, in compute, just sheer processing power, in image processing, using machine learning most recently, and in mapping. And so that means that now we're actually in our lifetime seeing the science fiction turn from just science fiction into reality. And the self-carrying car team from X has just graduated into their own company called Waymo, and some of them are here, so you should find them in the breaks. There are also startups, other tech companies, and even most of the car industry are now working on self-driving. And so that's really, we're like kind of on this brink of this transformation from cars that are designed for drivers to just mobility, where you go from A to B at the press of a button. And that's a really profound shift in perspective. My second theme is I want to talk about failure. So I'm a European, I'm an immigrant, and in Europe, we don't like failure. Like, it's not like a cool thing like it is in the Valley. But actually, even like as a Valley transplant, I don't really believe that, right? Because nobody really aims for failure. Like, all entrepreneurs always aim for success, and they try until they run out of money, typically. So at X, we definitely don't aim for failure, but our moonshots are audacious. So that means that failure is a reality. And so instead of failing fast, we focus on learning fast, and that means running at the hardest problems first. So Astro, who runs X, he sometimes talks about the monkey in the pedestal. Imagine you want to teach a monkey to recite Shakespeare while standing on a pedestal. So what's the hard bit about this? Do you focus on teaching the monkey, or do you focus on building the pedestal? Obviously, you shouldn't be spending any of your time building the pedestal, because you know how to do that. But that's not how we naturally work, right? When we make our to-do list, we're always tempted to start with the things that we know we can do so that we can knock some of the things off the list. But if you're working on a project and you spend the first year doing the easy stuff, and then in year 2 you get to a problem that you can't solve, the whole first year was a waste of time. So when projects first start at X, they're in my group. It's called the Foundry, because we found startups. It's kind of cute. And at the beginning, the teams pitched me really heavily on why the project's really great. But I also asked them to give me a list of all the things that would kill the project right at the beginning. Why would it not work? And these kind of kill criteria include both technical as well as business risks. And then that makes it a less emotional decision when we do have to shut down a project. Let me tell you about one of my favorite projects, Foghorn. The goal was to make carbon neutral fuel. So you extract CO2 from seawater, you use clean energy to make hydrogen, you combine the two to make a fuel. And then when that fuel burns in a car, the CO2 is released back into the atmosphere, and it's a closed carbon cycle. Sounds amazing, right? So the team actually solved most of the technical challenges. Here's Kathy Cooper, who's the founder of the project in our lab at Xerox PARC, who we partnered with on this. But our goal was to make fuel at a price that could compete with existing conventional fuel so that it could scale. And you can guess what this is. This is the oil price. So when we started the project, oil was $100 a barrel, and when we shut it down, it was $30. In fact, the team decided to shut it down their own project when it hit 30, because that was their kill criteria and they had hit it. So now they're working on a paper that's just been submitted to a peer-reviewed journal. We hope they accept it, because we'd love to share this work with the world. Because I like to think that Project Foghorn's not dead, it's just deep frozen, and maybe somebody will see something that we overlooked to make this happen. So as a manager of these early stage teams, I think a lot about how can we make it safe or even possible for our teams to fail. And that's an incredibly important part of the X culture. So we work really hard to take away the fear of losing my pride, my bonus, my promotion, or even my job. When our projects shut down, because we're a factory with multiple moonshots, often people find other jobs inside the group, not always. 2 team members from the Foghorn team actually pitched new projects that are now in my group. We're also establishing rituals, so teams that shut down their own project get a bonus. They present at an all-hands, so that we don't just talk about milestones we hit, but also learn from the failures. And last November, we had the biggest ritual of all. We celebrated Dia de los Muertos. It was a tradition, when it's celebrated in Mexico, we had a traditional ceremony with dancers, with a shaman, with drummers. And we invited Xers to look inside and really take the time to let go. And they mourned their loved ones they lost, they mourned their failed marriages, and they mourned their failed projects. And they brought artifacts of dead prototypes, of dead ideas, and of dead projects to the altar. And they grieved, and they danced, and they moved on. And I think that letting go, both in our personal life and in our professional life, is so important. Now, I've talked a lot about teams, and that's because I really, really believe that innovation is a team sport. So in the Valley, there's often this myth of the single, genius inventor, right? Like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk or, Sergey and Larry. Now, the reality is they didn't make the iPhone or the Tesla car or the Google search engine by themselves, right? It's always teams. Great innovations are made by great teams. So let me tell you a story about Project Ring, which is our drone delivery project. Our first use case was to deliver defibrillators to heart attack victims. We loved this. You turn drones from killing machines into lifesavers. But then our research team put dummies in the lab, and they gave innocent bystanders a defibrillator and said, save this person's life. And it turned out it took them 6 minutes to figure out how to use the machine. So that means even if you deliver the defibrillator by drone, within 8 minutes, the ambulance is there anyway. So it's kind of pointless. And after much debate, the team switched to a new use case, and now they're experimenting with food delivery. which makes some sense, right? Has to get there fast and still be hot. But the point of the story is that it sort of exposes the diversity of thinking in the team, right? The engineers were very much focused on the how. How do we make this work? How do we deliver the thing? Whereas the researchers asked why, like, are we even solving the right problem? And that's actually why I'm here at this conference, because I believe they will never succeed in our moonshots unless we have an extraordinarily diverse team. And like many tech companies, our diversity stats by traditional measures like gender or color are not great. We're working on it. We're heavily investing in development programs for women, for instance, and we now have a hiring goal of 50% diverse candidates. So for every privileged candidate we look at, we will make sure we also look at a diverse candidate. But this is, of course, hard because there's not that many women, for instance, in our field, especially in hardware. But the ones that we do have are really badass. And the lesbians at X, I have to say, is like an extraordinarily powerful bunch. So I want to give a shout out to Gabriella, who's on the top left. Gabriella Levine is in our rapid eval team, and she's speaking at Cuba at 11:40, so please make your way over there after the break. She's a woman, she's a lesbian, she's an engineer, she's a maker, she's an artist, a concert pianist, and a wilderness firefighter. So Xers have many, many, many different roles in our teams, and they come from many different backgrounds, right? Like software and hardware engineers, startup founders, Navy SEALs, fashion designers, pilots, etc. And I just want to close on one thing. I simply want to say, we embrace you, we welcome you, we think you're an incredibly powerful community, we accept you, and we would love you to come and visit. And by the way, all of our bathrooms are gender neutral, individual, single occupancy, and also uniquely designed. So your choice would be, I don't know, flock wallpaper or iridescent tiles rather than male or female. Thank you.